Hello, this is Straight to the Truth coming at you. We have breaking news, breaking news. Mr. Hunter Biden, the President of the United States of America's son, has been found guilty on all charges of gun possession. He could face up to 25 years in prison. You heard me. He could face up to 25 years in prison. He is been found guilty. Hunter faces 25 years in prison, fines, and gun trial. Let's listen up.
In Wilmington, Delaware. All right, Leo, your first response.
My first response is I go back to the Harris Faulkner Leo Terrell segment about 6 months ago. When you asked me that question, is there any way that plea deal could be stopped? I said the judge. The judge played a major role in the rule of law by saying I'm not going to agree to this plea deal, had questions, and that's why we're here today. The American public needs to know that. That is the rule of law, and I applaud the judge. That she did an outstanding job in following the rule of law.
Andrew, do they appeal? What does this look like? Because September is going to be here in a heartbeat, and you've got that tax fraud trial, which you say is stronger than this.
Well, Hunter got exactly what he was asking for. He wanted this trial, he got it, and he got a big guilty verdict because what he did over the years, his actions and his words that provided the government the evidence for that. What he, I think, has done through this is left open the possibility of an appeal. The Second Amendment issues related to having this kind of drug addiction or drug use at the time of buying or possessing a gun is not necessarily settled law through the Supreme Court. So I see this going through an appellate channel where they're challenging the underlying basis of the law, not his conduct itself.
Aren't they looking at that right now? I mean, I know the U.S. Supreme Court has a lot on its plate. I don't know if they'll get to that one.
Yeah, there's various versions, not this exact question before them right now, but the issue of whether guns and gun possession is more consistent with preventing people who have like a mental illness versus people who are on alcohol. Alcohol itself typically not something that prohibits gun possession or ownership, but mental illness may be. So the Supreme Court is looking deep into exactly when the Second Amendment can be essentially revoked from an individual with regard to their mental condition or the substances that they use.
Jonathan Turley, if you're still with us, I'm going to ask you about what this does overall to the tenor in the United States. I mean, this case was very different than how former President Trump was treated in a lot of different ways. Two different cases, so we can understand some of it, but not all of it. He's still under a gag order.
Well, this was a very fair judge in my view. She ruled for the defense and for the prosecutors on different issues. She went right down the middle of the road. And I think in the end, justice was done here. This jury was able to overcome a nullification strategy. I think part of the problem was that Abbe Lowell, the defense attorney, put forward a bunch of defenses in the opening statement that collapsed within 48 hours. The prosecutors did an extraordinarily good job here. They were focused, they were disciplined, and they methodically took apart each of these defenses in front of the jury. And when you pursue a nullification strategy, it can go too far sometimes. It can make the jury feel like they're being treated as chumps. And I think that here the jury followed
Jonathan,
their instructions.
excuse me, we're
duty.
seeing the First Lady Jill Biden walk into the courthouse. So it's taken a little bit longer for all of the family members to reassemble. We saw Hunter Biden go a few minutes ago back into the courthouse. But we knew that once a verdict had been reached, at least he would return, and maybe even all of that family. Previously, we saw Joe Biden's brother James go in too. So they are reassembling ahead of the reading of this verdict. Jonathan, finish your thought.
Well, that was an interesting moment to have the First Lady come in, because I'm sure the prosecutors were not happy with having this array of Biden family members, very famous figures, behind Hunter. It reminded this jury that this is Biden town. This is Wilmington. This is where the Bidens reside. And it says a lot about the jurors that they overcame that. There was obvious sympathy for the defendant. I had sympathy for the defendant. When you hear his account of his struggle with drugs you can't be anything but empathetic. But there was also an unavoidable series of criminal acts in all of this. And by saying things like he might not have checked the box, or he had a moment of sobriety, or maybe he was just using alcohol, really, I think, might have insulted some of the jurors. The way that Lowell made it sound is that the question meant, are you doing drugs while you're purchasing this
Right.
weapon?
While you fill out the form.
He narrowed it so much. Right.
Right, and what the witnesses told, right down to his ex-girlfriend, who was the wife, now widow, of his brother Bo, was just how extensive that drug use was around about the time that he bought that gun. And she knew how bad it was. Let's just remember, she knew how bad it was. That's who went to search the truck for paraphernalia and came up with the gun. I was shocked.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Nora O'Donnell in Washington, and we are coming on the air with breaking news from the federal gun trial of Hunter Biden, the first child of a sitting U.S. president to face criminal charges. We have just learned that the jury of 6 men and 6 women have reached a verdict after deliberating for roughly 3 hours over 2 days. We have learned that he has been found guilty on all 3 counts. Hunter Biden was charged with 2 felony counts for lying on a form, required to purchase a firearm in 2018. Then there was a 3rd charge, also a felony for being in possession of a firearm while abusing or being addicted to drugs. Our congressional correspondent Scott McFarland is outside the courthouse in Delaware. He has been following this case from the beginning with news on this verdict. Scott?
Nora, it didn't take this jury long. 1 hour deliberation yesterday, 2 hours this morning. They come back guilty on all 3 counts for the president's son, which raises the prospect the president's son, Hunter, could face a prison sentence when this case goes to sentencing, likely later this year. The 3 charges all involve a gun he bought in October 2018. A gun the feds say he bought knowing he was a drug user, knowing he was addicted to drugs and therefore illegally, and for filing a false statement on the background check form when he didn't mark that he was a drug user or drug addict. The defense in this case, especially in closing arguments yesterday, tried to hinge its arguments that Hunter Biden may have been in recovery or getting sober in October 2018 and therefore didn't knowingly violate the law. That argument did not sway the 6-man, 6-woman jury from Wilmington, Delaware. And it's noteworthy, as Hunter Biden walked back in the courtroom a few moments ago, this day has been a singular day for Hunter Biden. In previous days, his whole family was here. The First Lady was here. His father, the president's sister, was here. Today it's Hunter Biden in the courtroom learning his fate at the defense table with his attorney, Abby Lowell.
And Scott, let's talk about what Hunter Biden faces now. This is him walking in with his wife earlier today. My understanding is that each of the 3 counts has a maximum fine of $250,000, and that Biden faces up to 25 years in prison. But it's also my understanding that first-time offenders don't get anywhere near that. What do we know?
Yeah, the federal sentencing guidelines are going to be calibrated between now and the sentencing date. We're waiting to learn the sentencing date. We could find it out in a few moments. Could be early to mid-fall of this year. Federal sentencing guidelines will likely be calibrated to account for Hunter Biden having no criminal record, for having no federal felonies in his past, for a case that often gets pleaded out and doesn't go to trial. There'll be arguments by the defense and by the Department of Justice's special counsel as to what's an appropriate prison sentence. Then the same judge who heard this trial, Mary Ellen Noreika, a Trump appointee to the bench, will determine his fate at sentencing. But yeah, this is a federal firearms felony. It carries the risk or the prospect of prison time for the president's son at the end of what was the first ever criminal trial of a sitting president's child.
Scott McFarland, thank you. I want to bring in Major Garrett, our chief Washington correspondent. And Major, there's been a lot of focus on Hunter, tax evasion charges, and this in particular, now guilty on all 3 counts.
So Nora, the last month in our country has been a conversation about application of justice. How high does it go? Can the high be brought down, brought low by the application of the law? And juries have decided that in not 1 but 2 cases. Both unprecedented in our history. A former president being indicted,
Donald Trump.
convicted by a jury, and now the son of a president. And this question, is justice applied fairly? Is there political motives? Well, the White House and Democrats would argue, well, if you think that there is some sort of prosecutorial misconduct with Trump, look, the president's own son is in a federal courthouse, has now been found guilty by a jury of his peers. Son, both facing either probation or some kind of reckoning with the law.
From cases that really, or from alleged wrongdoing that dates back, in this case with Hunter Biden, to 2000.
So there you have it. Biden, the President of the United States of America, son, has been found guilty. Hunter Biden has been found guilty of all 3 charges of possessing a firearm, a gun, while being a drug user, and also lying and falsifying documents to get a gun when he knew he was addicted and he was using drugs, cocaine and other narcotic drugs. He has been found guilty and could face up to 25 years. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow. Hit the bell up above so when I post something, you'll be the first to get it. Make sure you subscribe. It helps the channel to grow. And also make sure you hit that like, thumbs up button. We need that to get the videos out. Y'all have a good day. Peace.